Hello, welcome back to another video tutorial here at Geekatplay Studios. My name is Gary Miller. You know, one of the things that Vue does so well is create atmospheres and create sunsets. And I created this image the other day because I was inspired by a picture that I saw. And I spent a lot of time on this composing the foreground. I spent a lot of time kind of tweaking the textures on the foreground and choosing the right plants that I wanted, playing around with textures for the rocks that I made an ecosystem out on. And I wanted this to be a sunset image, but oftentimes, unfortunately, when you choose a sunset atmospheric preset, the sky looks great, the clouds look great, the lighting is wonderful, but unfortunately the foreground is oftentimes too dark, and all the detail that you have put your time into in creating a foreground is lost because it's too dark, and this is a perfect example of it. I like the sky, I love the effect of the light in the clouds, and I want to save this effect. I don't want to change how the sky looks, but the foreground definitely needs some work. Well, I guess I could come over here and raise my sun up a little bit, look over here at my thumbnail, and it looks like my foreground is illuminated a little bit. So let's do a little render of this and see what effect I've achieved so far. And as this is finishing up its final pass, now you can see my foreground is more illuminated. You can start to see some of the detail I can put in. You can actually see now for the first time that I'm using Dave Burdick's stones and ground cover terrain textures. You would never have seen that before. But unfortunately, well, I've lost that sunset view, that sunset appearance that I had before. I've lost that nice warm orangey glow that I had. And that was really what I was trying to retain. Well, I guess I could come back here into light and, well, since the sky is too bright, now I could lower that down a little bit and lower my shadows a little bit more, and let's do a render of that. I'm starting to get the look back in my sky, but my foreground looks horrible. I've lost the strong dark shadows that I had, and I really want to retain it. What I really want to retain is I want that warm atmosphere glow that I had before, and I want the strong dark shadows on my foreground. All I want is just for this area here in front that I spent a lot of time on to be more illuminated. So I'm going to cancel that out and go back to how it was before. Oftentimes playing around with the sliders of and setting it for dark or bright, adjusting the shadow slider, and oftentimes I feel like a circus performer walking a tightrope. It tends to be a very delicate balancing act. Well, I think there's got to be a better way of illuminating the foreground that doesn't require coming over here and creating a spotlight, a quadratic light, a aerial light. I don't want to do all these because then I have to position it in my scene, make sure it's in line with my sun, because you've got to have all your shadows. You have to have the source of your light pretty much all coming from one localized area, because then otherwise your shadows will be falling all over the place and your light will look unnatural. So the best way that I have found to retain the elements of my scene as I want them to is to select my sunlight, and I'm going to Control D to duplicate that. And all I'm going to do is duplicate my sunlight and just raise it up a little bit. Now over here in my preview window, I can get an idea on how bright my foreground is being illuminated, and I'm going to do a little test render of this, and I'll be right back. Okay, as this is finishing up its final pass, I have now illuminated my foreground to a level that I am very comfortable with. I like this. It's a little bit too bright, and I will adjust that in just a moment. But the thing that was most important to me is being able to illuminate my foreground without changing the appearance of my sunset. My sky and the illumination of the sky has not changed at all, even though I duplicated my sunset, my sun object. But as I said, it's a little too bright. So what I want to do is just tone down the brightness a little bit. And to do so, on this slider here, this vertical slider on the right, white represents the sun at its highest intensity, and black is your sun pretty much turned off. So to begin with, I'm just going to put it right there in the middle, click OK, and see what effect this has on my image right now. And as this is completing its final pass, it's still a little bit too bright, so I will stop that. Let's close that out, and I'm going to drop it down a little bit more and do another little render. Okay, I had to drop down the intensity of my second sunlight a little bit more, but this is the effect that I am after. You can see the detail in the foreground, and the light illuminating the plants is not overly strong, and so I have been able to illuminate my foreground while at the same time preserving the appearance of the sunset that I originally started out with. And that's what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to complete a final render of this, and I'm going to drag it in the Photoshop because I want to demonstrate probably a different approach to some lighting techniques that are pretty special and I like very much, and it's one of my favorite methods of creating the sense or the effect of illumination. So I'm going to render this out, and I will be back in a few minutes. Alright, so I'm done with my render. In Photoshop, I like to also use the alpha composite channel that you can save out when you complete a render. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my alpha image and create a selection from it, because I'm going to use that on my image to create some lighting effects. So the first thing I want to do, if I want to use my alpha image, I need to come up here to Image, Adjustments, Mode, and I want to convert it to Grayscale. Now I can slide it right over, place it right above my render, and I don't need this anymore, so I can lose that. What I want to do is come up here to, let me bring this down a bit. I want to create a selection from the white area. So I'm going to come up here to Select and choose Color Range. And I'm going to, when I move off of this window, notice my cursor turns into a little target here. And I'm just going to sample the white area of my image. I have the fuzziness all the way up to 100. And if you play around with your settings, you'll see how it affects the selection that you are making. So I want to select the white area, choose OK. I don't need this anymore. Down here on my background image, I want to select that, come over here, say to the rectangular marquee, right click, and I want to create a copy of this selected area. So if I close out my background, there is just the foreground, and that's exactly what I want. So I'm going to create a new layer, and with my foreground and background colors set to their default black and white, come up here to Filter and Render and use my clouds. Well, that creates a nice cloud look, but it's a little bit too intense for me, so I'm going to stretch it out a little bit like that. Click OK and come down here to crop all that extra area that we stretched out. I don't need that anymore, so I can crop that out, and I'll commit that by clicking on that check mark. Now what I want to do is I want to create a selection from this layer. So I'm going to control and click right here on this little thumbnail, and it brings back my selection again. I'm going to come over here, select my cloud layer, come up here to select and click inverse. And now I'm going to hit delete. I'm going to control D to deselect that. Now I have my cloud layer only on the area of my foreground, and that's what I want. Now what I want to do is change the blending mode. I'm going to come down here to start off with overlay, and let me zoom in on this, and you can really see the cool effect that it starts having. That's overlay, and this is soft light. I kind of like overlay. Soft light is a little too intense, so I'm going to keep it at overlay. Now, if at any time you like the results that you're getting, but they're not quite enough, I'm just simply going to duplicate that layer. And now look at the kind of the fantasy glow that it creates on my landscape. In my opinion, at least for this image, that's a little too intense. So on that second copy that I made, I'm just going to bring down the opacity of it, maybe down to say 50%. That's 0. Yeah, about 50%. Looks like I'm sitting at 42. I'm just going with what my eye likes, not necessarily a concrete numerical value. So in just maybe 2 minutes total here in Photoshop and only a few minutes in Vue, I was able to take a very a simple image and customize my lighting scheme very quickly, very effectively, to give me the results that I want. And the results I'm after are preserving the wonderful sunset that Vue created, while at the same time enhancing and showing off the details of my foreground without having to create a whole bunch of lights, move them around. And of course, if you've played around with spotlights, you have to aim them up, down, left, and right. You're really playing around with the gimbal of the axis of it, and it takes time. But the method that we demonstrated here today, it's very quick, very simple, and the results are very good. So that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching here at Geekatplay Studios. My name's Gary Miller. Have a good day.